Today, Oprah Winfrey is one of the most powerful women in the world. But at just 14 years old, she was pregnant. And soon after, she lost the child. Long before the cameras, the applause, and the empire, she was a little black girl growing up in poverty, abuse, and silence. No protection. No voice. No sense of worth. So how did someone who once believed she was broken become a woman who healed millions? This is the story behind the crown. At 14 years old, Oprah Winfrey was still a child herself. But her childhood had already been stolen. She became pregnant in a world that offered her no safety, no guidance, and no mercy. Soon after giving birth, the baby died. There were no cameras, no sympathy, no space to grieve, just silence, and a wound that would stay buried for decades. This was not a tragedy the world knew about. It was a pain Oprah carried alone, growing up in poverty, surrounded by voices that taught her one lesson over and over again: endure quietly. For a young black girl in the Deep South, pain was not something you talked about. It was something you survived. And survival came at a cost. She learned to disconnect from her own emotions, to keep moving, to be strong before she ever felt safe. The loss didn't disappear. It transformed into shame, self-blame, and a deep belief that something inside her was permanently damaged. Years later, the world would see her smile on television. They would call her confident, powerful, unbreakable. But behind that image was a woman who never learned how to mourn the child she lost, or the childhood that ended far too soon. This moment didn't just shape Oprah's past. It shaped the way she loved, the way she struggled, and the way she searched desperately for meaning. Because when pain is never acknowledged, it doesn't fade. It waits. And one day, it demands to be heard. Oprah Winfrey was born in rural Mississippi, into a world that offered very little room for softness. Poverty wasn't a phase. It was the atmosphere she breathed every day. Her early years were shaped by instability, fractured family bonds, and a constant sense of uncertainty about where she belonged. Her parents separated when she was young. She was passed between households, never fully rooted, never fully protected. In many ways, Oprah grew up learning how to adapt rather than how to feel safe. Home was not a sanctuary. It was simply a place she survived. As a child, she experienced repeated sexual abuse by people she should have been able to trust. These were not single moments of trauma, but ongoing violations that rewired how she saw herself and the world. Fear became familiar. Shame became internalized. And silence became a survival skill. No one explained to her that what was happening was wrong. No one intervened. So she did what many traumatized children do: she blamed herself. She believed the abuse meant something about who she was, that she was damaged, that she was somehow responsible. And those beliefs followed her quietly, embedding themselves deep into her identity. In the Deep South during that era, being a young black girl meant living at the intersection of invisibility and expectation. You were expected to endure hardship without complaint. Pain was not something to be processed. It was something to be endured quietly. And vulnerability was often mistaken for weakness. So Oprah learned to disappear emotionally. She learned to be observant instead of expressive, to listen instead of speak, to excel academically as a way out. Not because she felt confident, but because knowledge felt like control. Books became her refuge. Words became her shield. Language gave her a way to step outside her circumstances, even when her body couldn't escape them. When she spoke, people listened, and for brief moments she felt seen. But that visibility came with a cost. Behind her intelligence and verbal brilliance was a child who never felt safe in her own body. A child who learned early that love could be conditional, that attention could be dangerous, and that trust could be broken without warning. These early experiences didn't just shape her fears, they shaped her future struggles with self-worth. They influenced the relationships she would later enter, the boundaries she struggled to set, and the constant quiet question that followed her into adulthood. Am I worthy of love if I'm truly known? This wasn't just a difficult childhood. It was a childhood that trained her nervous system to stay alert at all times, to anticipate harm, to stay strong instead of soft. And yet, buried beneath the fear and silence, something remarkable was forming. Oprah developed an extraordinary sensitivity to human emotion. She could sense pain in others because she recognized it so deeply in herself. She could listen, not just with her ears, but with her entire presence. What once broke her was also shaping her. She didn't know it then. But the same childhood that taught her to survive was quietly preparing her to one day help millions feel seen, heard, and understood. For Oprah Winfrey, success was never about fame. It was about escape. Escape from poverty. Escape from silence. Escape from a past that still lived inside her, even when she tried to outrun it. From a young age, Oprah showed an extraordinary gift for language. She could speak with clarity, emotion, and presence far beyond her years. When she stood in front of a room, people listened. For the first time in her life, her voice created space instead of danger. Education became her way out. Not because it erased her trauma, but because it gave her structure, something predictable in a world that had never felt safe. Words gave her control. They allowed her to shape meaning instead of being consumed by pain. Her entry into broadcasting came almost unexpectedly. Radio and television didn't demand perfection of appearance at first. They demanded connection. And Oprah had that instinctively. She wasn't polished. She wasn't detached. She was real. But real was not what the industry wanted. Early in her career, she was told she was too emotional, that she cared too much, that she didn't fit the traditional mold of a television anchor. She was even fired from a reporting job and reassigned to daytime television, an unspoken demotion at the time. To the industry, it was a failure. To Oprah, it felt like confirmation of a lifelong fear that she didn't belong. What they couldn't see was that her emotional openness wasn't a flaw, it was the source of her power. While others read the news, Oprah connected with the people behind it. She didn't just ask questions. She listened. Still, beneath her rising confidence was an unresolved past. The child who learned to stay quiet was now being asked to speak loudly, but without guidance on how to carry her pain safely. Work became a refuge. Long hours. Relentless ambition. Constant forward motion. She believed that if she could achieve enough, accomplish enough, prove enough, the pain would eventually disappear. But it didn't. Every success brought applause, yet each quiet moment brought the same questions back. Am I enough? Do I deserve this? What happens if they really see me? Oprah was moving forward, but she was carrying everything with her. Her career was rising. Her visibility was growing. And unknowingly, she was stepping closer to a future that would force her to confront the one thing she had spent her entire life avoiding. The truth she had never spoken out loud. When the Oprah Winfrey Show began, it didn't look like a revolution. It looked like another daytime talk show. Soft lighting, polite conversations, familiar formats. But something about Oprah felt different. She wasn't distant. She wasn't performing authority. She was present. As the show grew, so did its reach. Ratings climbed. Audiences multiplied. Soon, Oprah Winfrey wasn't just a television host. She was becoming a cultural force. Millions tuned in not because she was flawless, but because she was human. She cried with her guests. She listened without interrupting. She asked questions that felt personal, not rehearsed. In a media world built on detachment, Oprah offered connection. And it worked. Beyond anyone's expectations. The show dominated daytime television. Her influence expanded into publishing, film, and business. Magazine covers, sold-out audiences, record-breaking contracts. She became one of the most powerful women in America. From the outside, it looked like complete victory. But inside, something was still missing. Success brought visibility, but not peace. Power brought control, but not healing. And applause could not quiet the voice that had followed her since childhood. The more she achieved, the more pressure she felt to become perfect. She was no longer allowed to struggle publicly, no longer allowed to be uncertain. She had become a symbol of strength, of resilience, of possibility. And symbols are not permitted to break. Behind the scenes, Oprah struggled with emotional eating and weight fluctuations. The cycle wasn't about food, it was about comfort. About trying to fill something that had been empty for a very long time. She worked relentlessly. Not just out of ambition, but out of fear. Fear that slowing down would allow the pain to catch up. Fear that rest would invite memories she had spent decades suppressing. Relationships followed a familiar pattern. Deep connection followed by distance. Longing for love followed by doubt that she deserved it. Despite her influence, she often felt alone. The world saw a woman who had everything. But Oprah knew the truth. Success had not healed her. It had only made the pain quieter. In moments away from the cameras, the questions returned. Questions she had never answered. Why did love feel unsafe? Why did validation never last? Why did achievement feel hollow the moment it was reached? These were not the questions of a celebrity. They were the questions of a wounded child, still waiting to be seen. And eventually, no amount of power could silence them. Because trauma doesn't disappear when you succeed. It waits. And when the noise fades, it speaks. By the time Oprah Winfrey reached the height of her power, the world believed she had transcended pain. Fame, wealth, influence, these were supposed to be the answers. But inside, the old wounds were still open. Success gave her a voice. It did not give her peace. Behind the scenes, Oprah struggled with a deep sense of self-worth that no achievement could stabilize. Praise felt temporary. Validation faded quickly. And when the applause stopped, the same quiet question returned. Am I enough? For Oprah, food became comfort long before it became a public topic. Not hunger, relief. Eating wasn't about indulgence. It was about survival. It was a way to soothe anxiety, to numb emotions she never learned how to process safely. This cycle repeated itself for years. Stress, control, restriction, then release. Public scrutiny made it worse. Every fluctuation became a headline. Every pound became a judgment. But the real battle wasn't physical. It was emotional. Oprah had learned early in life that love could be conditional and unsafe. So as an adult, she often overgave, overworked, overfunctioned. She took responsibility not just for her own feelings, but for everyone else's. This created a dangerous pattern. She became the caretaker, the listener, the healer, while quietly neglecting her own needs. And the pressure of being a symbol made vulnerability feel impossible. She could not fail publicly. She could not collapse. Millions depended on her strength, or so it felt. So she carried the weight alone. Depression didn't look like darkness in a room. It looked like exhaustion masked by productivity. Like a smile that never reached the nervous system. Like a woman who could inspire millions while feeling disconnected from herself. At times, Oprah questioned whether she deserved the life she had built. Whether success was something she had earned, or something she would eventually lose. Imposter syndrome followed her even at the top. And perhaps the most painful truth was this. She had spent her entire life learning how to survive pain, but never how to receive love without fear. The child who once believed silence kept her safe had grown into a woman who believed strength meant never needing help. But the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. And eventually, even Oprah Winfrey could not outrun herself. There came a point when even constant motion could no longer protect Oprah from herself. The distractions stopped working. The achievements felt distant. And the silence she had avoided her entire life finally caught up. In moments alone, away from the cameras and expectations, the truth surfaced, raw and unavoidable. Oprah began to confront a realization that terrified her more than failure. I didn't feel worthy of love. Not from partners. Not from the public. Not even from herself. This belief didn't come from adulthood. It came from childhood. From years of abuse where her boundaries were violated. From silence that taught her pain was something to endure, not heal. From a young girl who learned that being needed felt safer than being loved. As her influence grew, so did the weight of responsibility. People projected their hope onto her, their healing, their expectations. And Oprah carried it all. She became the strong one so others wouldn't have to be, the listener so others could speak, the guide so others could find meaning. But no one asked who was holding her. Inside, she felt fractured, split between the woman the world admired and the child who still felt unseen. The more she gave, the more depleted she became. And the more depleted she became, the harder it was to stop giving. This was the paradox of her success. Her empathy, the very thing that made her powerful, was also draining her. She absorbed pain everywhere she went. Every story, every confession, every tear shed in her presence added to a weight she never set down. Eventually, her body began to speak where her voice had not. Exhaustion, burnout, emotional shutdown. These weren't signs of weakness. They were signals. Signals that surviving was no longer enough. For the first time, Oprah began to question the role she had been playing her entire life. The role of the strong one, the healer, the woman who never needed help. She realized something profound and unsettling. You can't heal others while abandoning yourself. And in that realization, a quiet shift began. Not a dramatic collapse, not a public breakdown, but a subtle, internal reckoning. Oprah started asking questions she had never allowed herself to ask. Questions about boundaries, about self-compassion, about whether strength could include rest. And truth. The pain she had buried for decades didn't vanish, but it changed shape. For the first time, she didn't try to silence it. She listened. And in listening, she stood on the edge of the most important decision of her life: to stop performing strength and finally begin healing. For most of her life, Oprah Winfrey believed that strength meant endurance, that survival meant silence, and that pain, if ignored long enough, would eventually lose its power. She was wrong. The turning point didn't arrive as a scandal or a breakdown. It arrived as a choice to stop hiding. After years of carrying trauma quietly, Oprah did something radical. She began to speak the truth about her past, not as a confession for sympathy, but as an act of ownership. She spoke openly about the abuse she endured as a child, about the shame that followed her into adulthood, about the belief that she was somehow unworthy of love. For the first time, the most powerful woman in media allowed herself to be seen as human. This decision changed everything. Oprah's talk show began to shift. Conversations moved away from spectacle and controversy. Instead, they became spaces for vulnerability, healing, and emotional honesty. She invited guests not to entertain, but to tell the truth. Survivors spoke. People cried. Stories once whispered in shame were spoken out loud. And something extraordinary happened. The more Oprah revealed her own wounds, the more others felt safe to reveal theirs. The studio transformed into a collective healing space, one that millions watched from home. This wasn't just a personal breakthrough. It was a cultural shift. In a world that rewarded perfection, Oprah made vulnerability powerful. In an industry built on image, she centered truth. And in doing so, she redefined what leadership looked like. Speaking the unspeakable didn't weaken her. It freed her. Because when pain is brought into the light, it loses its control. And when one person finds the courage to speak, millions realize they are not alone. This was the moment Oprah stopped surviving her past and began transforming it into purpose. As Oprah Winfrey moved into the later chapters of her life, something shifted. The urgency softened. The need to prove disappeared. And in its place came clarity. She no longer chased validation. She cultivated alignment. Healing didn't erase her past. It reshaped her relationship with it. Oprah learned to set boundaries where she once overextended, to rest without guilt, to say no without explaining herself. For the first time, her strength came from wholeness, not endurance. This internal transformation expanded outward. Oprah's influence was no longer defined by ratings or contracts, but by impact. She began using her platform intentionally to elevate conversations around mental health, trauma, self-worth, and purpose. Through her media network, book selections, and public dialogues, she introduced millions to ideas once considered taboo: therapy, inner child healing, mindfulness, emotional intelligence. She normalized the truth that success does not protect you from pain, and that healing is not a sign of weakness, but wisdom. Beyond media, Oprah invested in education and opportunity, particularly for young girls who came from backgrounds like her own. She understood something deeply personal. Talent is everywhere. Access is not. Her philanthropy wasn't about charity. It was about restoration, about giving others what she once lacked: safety, support, and belief. What made Oprah's legacy powerful wasn't perfection. It was honesty. She never claimed to be healed completely. She acknowledged that growth is ongoing, that self-work is lifelong. And in doing so, she gave people permission to be unfinished. Today, Oprah Winfrey stands as more than a media icon. She is proof that trauma does not have to define your future, that your pain can become insight, and that healing, when embraced fully, can transform not only a life, but a culture. Her greatest achievement was not her empire. It was her courage to face herself and invite the world to do the same. Oprah Winfrey's story was never about becoming powerful. It was about becoming whole. She did not rise because life was kind to her. She rose because she chose to face the pain that once tried to silence her. The abuse, the shame, the belief that she was unworthy of love. 4 years, she survived by being strong. But true transformation began when she allowed herself to be honest. Oprah taught the world something rarely said out loud: success does not heal trauma. Money does not replace safety. And applause does not equal self-worth. Healing begins when we stop running. Her legacy is not just the empire she built, but the permission she gave millions of people to speak their truth, to seek help without shame, and to believe that their past does not disqualify their future. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You don't have to be healed to be valuable. You just have to be willing to face yourself. Oprah Winfrey did. And now the question remains, not about her story, but about yours. So what's your story?